I live near a church, and the church bells just went off. Do you know how many times they went off? Story time with Uncle Scotty times. Hello, I'm Uncle Scotty, your host for Storytime with Uncle Scotty. Our own mugs. Look at our own mugs. My favorite mug, the only mug I've ever used, the only mug I will ever use. HMU, hit me up. If you want your own mug, we have been reading Mr. Popper's Penguins, our new book. And in the first chapter, we met Mr. Popper, a painter. Mr. Popper's a painter in Stillwater. He has a nice life there, but he's never traveled anywhere else, and all he does is think about going to other places. And what places does he want to go to the most? The North Pole and the South Pole, the Arctic and Antarctic. And what he does is he thinks about those places all the time. He reads about them all the time. Now, he just came home, and his lovely, wonderful, supporting wife has said, you know, really great that you have this job, but the job doesn't go year-round, and now not only are you sitting around the house all the time reading about the Arctic and the Antarctic, daydreaming, you're in my way. Also, we have to live on half of your salary for our little family of 4 all the time. And so what does that mean, little Janie and little Bill? No steak, no ice cream, nothing but beans all winter. And now I am excited to find out what happens next. How do they address this problem? Do they change things? Do they keep it the same? Let's find out. Chapter 2, The Voice in the Air. That evening, when the little Poppers had been put to bed. Now, isn't that great? Little Poppers, Janie and Bill. That evening, when the little Poppers had been put to bed, Mr. and Mrs. Popper settled down for a long, quiet evening. The neat living room at 432 Proudfoot Avenue was much like all the other living rooms in Stillwater, except that the walls were hung with pictures from the National Geographic magazine. I don't know if you've seen a National Geographic magazine, but it's a magazine that's been around for a long time. My dad had like stacks of hundreds of them in our garage growing up. And they have pictures, beautiful pictures, from all over the world, from people and places and things and events and moments. Beautiful pictures. So in their living room, there's pictures everywhere from National Geographic magazine. Mrs. Popper picked up her mending some clothes, while Mr. Popper collected his pipe, his book, it's a bookmark, and his globe. From time to time, Mrs. Popper sighed a little, as she thought about the long winter ahead. Would there really be enough beans to last? She wondered. Mr. Popper was not worried, however. Classic man. As he put on his spectacles, he was quite pleased at the prospect of a whole winter reading travel books with no work to interrupt him. He set his little globe beside him and began to read. "What are you reading?" asked Mrs. Popper. "I'm reading a book called Antarctic Adventures. It is very interesting. It tells all about the different people who have gone to the South Pole and what they have found there." "Don't you ever get tired of reading about the South Pole?" "No, I don't. Of course, I would much rather go there than read about it. But reading is the next best thing." "Oh, I think it must be very boring down there," said Mrs. Popper. "It sounds very dull and cold with all that ice and snow." "Oh, no," answered Mr. Popper. "I wouldn't think it was dull if you had gone there with me to see the movies of the..." Let's rewind that. "Oh, no," answered Mr. Popper. "You wouldn't think it was dull if you had gone with me to see the movies of the Drake expedition at the Bayou last year." I think the Bayou, maybe Bijou, at the Bijou, I think that's their movie theater. The Drake expedition. As much as I would like that to be about Drake, my personal hero and favorite rapper, I think he's talking about Sir Francis Drake, an explorer. But we'll see. Maybe he's talking about Drake, Aubrey Graham from Toronto. Ask your parents. "Well, I didn't, and I don't think any of us will have any money for movies now," said Mrs. Popper, a little sharply. She was not at all a disagreeable woman, but sometimes she got rather cross when she was worried about money. "If you had gone, my love," went on Mr. Popper, "you would have seen how beautiful the Antarctic is. I think it is the nicest place of all. But the nicest part of it, of all, is the penguins. No wonder all the men on that expedition had such a good time playing with them. They are the funniest birds in the world. They don't fly like other birds. They walk upright, erect, like the little men. When they get tired of walking, they just lie down on their stomachs and slide. It would be very nice to have one as a pet. Pets, said Mrs. Popper. First it's Bill wanting a dog, and then Janie begging for a kitten. Now you and penguins. But I won't have any pets around. They make too much dirt in the house, and I have enough work now trying to keep this place tidy. To say nothing of what it costs to feed a pet. Anyway, we have the bowl of goldfish. I assume she's talking about little fish in an aquarium, but maybe she's talking about little Pepperidge Farm goldfish, which don't cost any money to feed at all. They actually do the feeding themselves. Back to the story. Penguins are very intelligent, continued Mr. Popper. Listen to this, Mama. It says here that when they want to catch some shrimps, they all crowd over to the edge of an ice bank. Only they don't just jump in because a sea leopard might be waiting to eat the penguins. So they crowd and push until they manage to shove one penguin off to see if it's safe. I mean, if he doesn't get eaten up, the rest of them know it's safe for them all to jump in. Dear me, said Mrs. Popper in a shocked tone. They sound to me like pretty heathen birds. The heathens are like rough, untamed, rude. It's a queer thing, said Mr. Popper, that all the polar bears live at the North Pole and all the penguins live at the South Pole. I should think the penguins would like the North Pole too, if only they knew how to get there. Now, if Mr. Popper's correct, I didn't know that penguins were only at the South Pole. I've seen penguins in other places, I think. Maybe they're not at the North Pole. At 10 o'clock, ding, Mrs. Popper yawned. Hard to say yawn without yawning. And laid down her mending. Well, you can go on reading about those heathen birds, but I am going to bed. Tomorrow is Thursday, September 30th, and I have to go to the first meeting of the Ladies' Aid and Missionary Society. September 30th, said Mr. Popper in an excited tone. You don't mean that tonight is Wednesday, September 29th? Why, yes, I suppose it is, but what of it? Mr. Popper put down his book of Antarctic adventures and moved hastily into the radio. What of it? He repeated, pushing the switch. Sorry, I have a little cough. Why, this is the night the Drake Antarctic expedition is going to start broadcasting. That's nothing, said Mrs. Popper. Just a lot of men at the bottom of the world saying, Hello, Mama. Hello, Papa. Shh, commanded Mr. Popper, laying his ear close to the radio. There was a buzz, and then suddenly, from the South Pole, a faint voice floated out into the Popper living room. This is Admiral Drake speaking. Hello, Mama. Hello, Papa. Hello, Mr. Popper. Gracious goodness, exclaimed Mrs. Popper. Did he say Papa or Popper? Hello, Mr. Popper, up there in Stillwater. Thanks for your nice letter about the pictures of our last expedition. Watch for an answer. But not by letter, Mr. Popper. Watch for a surprise. Signing off. Signing off. You wrote Admiral Drake? Yes, I did, Mr. Popper admitted. I wrote and told him how funny I thought the penguins were. Well, I never, said Mrs. Popper, very much impressed. Mr. Popper picked up his little globe and found the Antarctic. And to think, he spoke to me all the way from there. And he even mentioned my name. Mama, what do you suppose he means by a surprise? I haven't any idea, answered Mrs. Popper. But I'm going to bed. I don't want to be late for the Ladies' Aid and Missionary Society meeting tomorrow. I am so excited to see what the surprise is. Maybe we'll find out next time on Storytime with Uncle Scotty. I have been your host, Uncle Scotty. Thank you to thank you to Time. Our sponsor, always enough time, never too much time. Perfect timing. I'll see you next time. Bye.